Greetings, everyone. This is Rorschach on the Spot coming at you with the weekly comic book roundup, and we've already covered most of this week's Marvel books. Now we'll be covering this week's one miscellaneous Marvel book, which potentially could have fallen into the Avengers category, as well as this week's offering from Boom Studios and this week's offerings from DC Comics. So kicking things off, we'll finish Marvel off with the Widowmkers one-shot. Widowmakers focuses on two supporting characters from the upcoming Black Widow movie, Yelena Belova and the Red Guardian. We get a quick rundown as to who they are. Alexei Shostakov, aka Red Guardian, is a former test pilot and intelligence agent of the Soviet Union. And he's also Natasha Romanoff's ex-husband. After several fake deaths and other painful intrigues, Alexei attempted a worldwide power grab that brought him head-to-head with his ex-wife, and the Black Widow won. He was arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D. and placed in custody, but S.H.I.E.L.D. no longer exists. Yelena Belova is a graduate of the Red Room who once tried to replace Natasha Romanoff as Russia's premier spy. She failed, but over the course of her journey, she realized that Natasha was not her true enemy. She's fought both for and against the Avengers and their many villains, but was recently helping Natasha take down the remnants of the Red Room. But ultimately, Belova's only master is herself. Also of note, Yelena is in the current Black Widow ongoing, doing her own surveillance mission on the brainwashed Natasha Romanoff. And Natasha was brainwashed by a group of villains that includes none other than Alexei Shostakov. So yeah. So the issue begins in Moscow. It's narrated by Yelena. The politicians you vote for, the shows you watch, the stories you are reading, all are telling you the same thing, my friend. The game is fixed. There are a tiny, small number of people cheating. People with more money and power than you dream. You know this. I know you know this. But here's what you maybe fail to understand. You are the game field. These people, they play for control over you. We then switch over to New York. Yelena's being hired by a man named Justin Kask. The mission is for Yelena to break someone out of a S.H.I.E.L.D. Black Ops site in the Antarctic. And he doesn't have the exact location on it, but he can get her, and he can only get her as far as Christchurch. And he has no clue who's running the place in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s absence. All kinds of crazy stuff has been auctioned off and abandoned since they shut down. After all. So, Yelena stows away in a crate, and when it's opened, well, there's a bunch of guards waiting for her. She takes them down. Well, she avoids them as well as other guards, shooting a few, but more just causing problems, causing hindrances to as many as possible. Turns out though that Dr. Durst, who Yelena was tasked with rescuing, is actually running the prison, and in fact, this was all set up by Kask, as apparently Durst has been experimenting upon the prisoners. That it's all a trap, basically, and they're supposed to kill Yelena so she doesn't have to be paid. They fail in this. She escapes, continues on through, fighting off more of the guards, only for Red Guardian to save her. It turns out Red Guardian is being held there, and Durst actually offered to make him part of his whole thing. But he would prefer not to work with Americans, after all. So she breaks him out of his cell. They make their way through. And he was, well, he didn't expect Natasha to be able to save him. He did dream that maybe she would. But he points out some spots, ideal spots for explosives in the prison. Uses and then has her uses a boomerang-shaped toy of it or weapon of his. So they got her own with Durst, and Yelena escapes in a jet that looks very much like the old Cobra Night Raven from the G.I. Joe toy line, which admittedly was based off of the SR-71 Blackbird. But the base explodes. Later on, a Met fundraiser gala, people are approaching Cask and thanking them for his generous contribution to their cause. Yelena explains to a security, to one of Cask's security people. Basically, she hacked Cask's account and diverted every asset he had to various causes. He now literally has nothing. And crawling out of the wreckage of the prison is a slightly bloodied Red Guardian. Now we already know that Red Guardian has made his way back to society, and in fact is working with a cabal of villains who are who have kidnapped Black Widow, brainwashed her to believe she's an architect, and are about to, basically put her in a cage and she doesn't even realize she's in. That is where the issue ends. But part of Yelena's journey in the whole thing is basically kind of realizing that she, trying to be good, but also having still being able to do certain questionable things. Much like, basically, kind of following in Natasha's footsteps, to be perfectly honest. Because while Natasha Romanoff is definitely a hero, she still she has done questionable things, and she is still able to do questionable things. There was an entire bit in Hawkeye Freefall where she said she probably would have, continued having a thing with Hawkeye if she realized, that he actually was game for some of the darker stuff. Anyway, moving on to Something is Killing the Children, number 12. Where we left off, the Order of St. George, the Slaughter family, were on their way to Archer's Point. Which is the name? Archer's Peak. And James and Erica were trying to escape, but one of the creatures had found them. So the issue begins with James running to a house, not banging on the door, and one of the police officers shows up at the door, and he explains what's happening. Well, James explains what's happening. It turns out Erica has been bitten, or has been attacked by one of the monsters. She survived, but she's injured. And so we now get a flashback. Yeah, she killed one, but another one did get her arm, and yeah, she's hurting. Also, the Order of St. George is coming. And we see actually an Order of St. George vehicle on its way stop at a sign denoting Archer's Peak and slap an exit closed sticker across it. Inside, it turns out that they're at the officer's parents' place. His parents are out of town, but Erica is fixing her wounded arm and trying not to make too much of a mess. Meanwhile, at the school, Tommy is doing recon for the sheriff, trying to make sure that the monsters have left the area, as everyone is now hiding within the gym. But he does first he just sees bits and pieces of bodies, but then he does catch one of the monsters outside. which startles him when he drops his walkie. But he also sees something else. The arrival of 4 members of the Order of St. George, just as the sheriff brings him back in. But he does tell the sheriff that, I didn't just see one of the creatures out there. Alluding, obviously, meaning he's telling him, yeah, some of Erica's people are outside. So Beyond, and back with Erica, she goes to talk to Beyond. Beyond's mad at her, actually, because Beyond wanted to hurt them, because Beyond didn't want the babies to get hurt. But Erica explains that, the babies grew up, and, they killed some kids that had grown up, and one of them took a bite out of Erica. So Beyond kind of says, okay, well, I wanted them to stay small and nice. And but Erica asked what she first heard about monsters, and apparently her and her older sister had a sleepover at Carly Monitz's house. They were talking about telling each other scary stories, and then Carly's brother Tyler, one of James's friends who was killed before the story actually began, came into the stories were baby stories. But he had a real scary story with a monster in the ravine that his friend had seen it. And, in fact, had almost been eaten by it. Turns out, James was the friend. And he made the whole thing up. And so he goes out, he's obviously distraught, goes outside, and, it's like, this is all my fault, isn't it? But Erica says it's not, but it started with me. And Erica says, yeah, that's true. And he asks her how long she knew, and she explains that, it didn't start with him, it wouldn't have left him alive in the ravine that night. Apparently that was real enough to spread. Erica adds saying, there are a lot of things that need to happen to create a monster. But she's cut off by a member of the Order of St. George, explaining that an upstanding member of the Slaughter family, the House of Slaughter, certainly wouldn't reveal such things to children. And others arrive, and, well, yeah. The cop explains to Erica that they did kind of, catch him, and then, but Erica tells him it's okay. However, she's probably informed that it's not okay, as the officer's throat is opened by the other member of the House of Slaughter, or one of the other members of the House of Slaughter, with a knife. And that is where the issue ends. And next up, we'll be moving on to DC Comics. Starting off with Batman number 103. Where we'd left off, in the aftermath of the Joker War, Clown Hunter was going around killing former followers of the Joker. It seemed mostly he was going after ones who weren't entirely repentant, but most recently he had set his sights on Harley Quinn, who had just made arrangements to rent an apartment in Little Santa Prisa. Also, however, a long-standing adversary, I guess would be the best way to put it, of Batman's by the name of Ghostmaker had arrived in Gotham. Basically trying to, say, look, I know you're going to never come here. Well, here's the deal. You're screwing shit up here, so that's why I'm here, because you won't do what needs to be done. And one of the things the Ghostmaker thinks needs to be done is the death of is killing Clown Hunter. So the issue begins many years ago in the Gobi Desert. It's the anniversary of the night that the Waynes were killed. Young Bruce is sitting in the desert meditating. Ghostmaker, also young, goes to them talk, and then and during their talk, Ghostmaker explains that caring makes someone weak. Bruce insists that it doesn't. Then go back to the present day. Barbara Gordon is actually doesn't understand what's going on. She can't see whoever Batman is fighting from any angle, and the voice is distorted. Batman tries to explain. Somebody says he's the Ghostmaker, and he's not. He's not supposed to be there. Apparently, Bruce used to make fun of Ghostmaker for the name, but yeah. Oracle then asks again what's going on, because, but Batman explains that apparently Ghostmaker is still upset that Batman made fun of Ghostmaker when they were 15. And as Batman shoves Ghostmaker's face into a wall, he adds that he's even more upset that he's beaten Ghostmaker every time they've gone head to head since he turned 20. And so Ghostmaker then goes over his list of accomplishments for the day. The last 12 hours. Leaking the criminal activities of 14 different district judges to the Gotham Gazette. Solve a string of homicides that hadn't been linked together by the GCPD. Killers already arrived to Arkham. The FBI was sent a location of 6 incoming shipments of heavy artillery from Santa Prisa, and that was all before Ghostmaker left his plane. Meanwhile, Ghostmaker basically, and you're standing here protecting children like this clown hunter who've already been twisted into unrepentant killers. So, Batman suggests that Clown Hunter run, which Clown Hunter actually takes the advice. Their fight continues, and Harley found a sprig of poison ivy in Robinson Park and took it home and planted it. And she basically uses it as a stand-in for Ivy. Called it her touchstone to Ivy. And as if she probably should stop touching it. She has rashes in places that Ivy wouldn't believe, after all. She goes over what's happened with Ivy. Kisses it, and then, she keeps talking to it. As Clown Hunter sneaks up on her with his, as he calls it, his bat. It's a baseball bat with a batarang stuck through the top of it. But she does explain, but he does ask if she talks to a lot of plants, and she says, sure, it helps to get the inside thoughts outside. An old trick from when she was on the other side of the psych ward. Find some kind of totem to have the conversation you need to have with the people you aren't with anymore, or who aren't with you anymore. Helps to keep your brain together to hear the things you're thinking. And she explains that right now, she's thinking that there's this weird teenager with a mohawk glued to his skateboard helmet in her apartment is trying to kill her. And Connor asks how she knows he's a teenager. She says, well, you stink like one. Get some deodorant. Seriously. But she, when she learns the name of his bat, she explains that that's great. She loves it and thinks he's a funny kid. Then she likes him. But apparently, well, he doesn't want her to like him. Which she says she's very likable. The fight goes on. She does basically though. As the fight goes on, she does manage to beat him, and she also. He asks, how many people have you killed? How many more did you watch Joker kill? And she explains that in her professional experience, the only people who keep track of how many people they've killed are completely fucking nuts, and not in the fun way. But she tries not to live in the past. She's all about finding her potential, and her future is looking shiny and bright. She did, after all, tell the batch of Poison Ivy that she's kind of thinking about being a good guy. And then Batman comes crashing through the window, and she explains she's gonna need to bribe the hell out of the landlord. Batman chides Clown Hunter for not running, and Harley kicks him in the face. And she says, "Hey, don't be mad. I didn't kill him. In fact, I'm tying him up like you hero types do. We can toss him over to the pigs so he can get tormented by our city's broken justice system. I'm picking up the hero thing fast." And she's also picking up that Batman's been stabbed. And she also likes Ghostmaker's swords. Ghostmaker introduces himself, and she straight up says that he's got a dumb name. He takes Harley down with a knockout dart, states that he hates the city, and Batman then goes through all of Ghostmaker's achievements. First, starting with Denton Quill, the serial killer, explaining a member of his family has been trailing him for 2 weeks, waiting for him to reveal where he stores his trophies, so they could pin every homicide on him. The families will have to live with hearsay now. They'll never know how many victims he had. Ghostmaker claims, that's an excuse, and they shouldn't have let him stay out on the street. Batman then adds that the judges were under the thumb of an international mob boss named Tiger Shark. Ghostmaker destroyed a RICO case that would have put a master criminal away for life. Ghostmaker states that, swears Batman's lying, but Batman says, "Hey, your GhostNet already has the files from the DA's office. You know I'm telling the truth." Batman then explains that he replaced the ammunition from the weapons from Santa Prisa 6 days ago with faulty shells, and was waiting to take down their buyers here in Gotham. When asked to prove it, he explains there was a crate filled with live chickens in with the weapons, along with a handwritten book on Santa Prisa and recipes. Batman then adds he's not perfect, the city's dangerous, and he could always do better. But Ghostmaker doesn't understand Gotham or what it needs. Ghostmaker then, again, using Clown Hunter as his, example, says, the boy killed 24 people in the midst of Joker's last attack, more than 3 times the number of Denton Quill, and Batman's protecting him. Batman then says, "You think if they threw him in the Blackgate he'd stop? The guards would help him." And so Ghostmaker says he requires more permanent action. Batman says he's 17 and watches his parents die in front of him. But Ghostmaker cuts him off, explaining, Batman always lets his emotions get in the way of the work. Then hits Batman with a knockout dart and says that he's taking Batman off the field. And then he's going to show Batman what Gotham City can be with a real crime fighter in charge. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our next book. The first of two Dark Knight's death metal related books for the week. Justice League number 57. The Doom Metal Conclusion. Where we left off, Hawkgirl, Nightwing, Starfire, Cyborg, Detective Chimp, and Lex Luthor had freed the Legion of Doom from Perpetua's throne. And they immediately turned on the Justice League. So we begin back with Dick once again thinking about the first time he met the League. And his thoughts on the whole thing. But then adding, as time went on, he's been around the League more than almost anyone. He could see what the rest couldn't. The League was winging it. Fast speeches and bravado and smiles, they were just as freaked out as he was. But we see how he joined Hawkgirl's whole thing. And, yeah, Grodd, Sinestro, and Cheetah all manage to avoid... He manages to avoid attacks from Grodd, Sinestro, and Cheetah all at once. Marshmallow breaks things up. They try to talk some sense into the Legion of Doom. Detective Chimp isn't dead after all, but he reminds them, "Hey, the Omega Titan or the Omega Knight is still alive." So, a plan is formed. Marshmallow links the Legion of Doom with the League members. The plan goes like this: Hawkgirl, Cyborg, and Starfire provide covering fire against the Omega Knight. They distracted it last time. Now he wants them to make it mad. While the Omega Knight's focused on the League, get the Legion of Doom close to the throne. So when the throne blew up, it nearly took the Omega Knight out. They can do that again. If Perpetua harnessed the power inside Sinestro, Cheetah, and Grodd, so can they. Explaining that it will burn out the ultraviolet spectrum, which then Sinestro, as he prefers the color of fear anyway. So the attack is made, and yeah, it does take down the Omega Knight. And so, Marshmallow makes an offer to Lex to join the League, but Lex turns him down, opting to try to rebuild the Legion of Doom and escape him in a boom tube. And but Marshmallow, when the Legion of Doom leaves, the Jean explains that Green Lanterns are a return from the multiverse and want everyone to meet them on Themyscira. That is where the issue ends. Which brings us to Dark Knight's Death Metal, number 5. Where we left off, things were not looking good for the Trinity. But various other things have happened in other tales, so maybe things will look up. So the Robin Knight is torturing our heroes, and he talks about how he killed the Wonder Woman on his world. She gave a speech, and before she was given a medal, he booby-trapped the medal with God Killer's sword and needles, so it killed her But it was a good speech. And he begins to say it, to give it, but then Darkest Night cuts him off, explaining that he can kill them soon enough. As the Darkest Night and the Robin King leave, Darkest Night, after all, is a god to kill. He tells Castle Bat to hold them until it's time. And so, Batman explains that if Castle Bat is his consciousness infused with Gotham, it's made of every material ever produced in Kane County. Red sun particles, courtesy of Gotham's astrophysics lab, circa 1901. Some Intertron from the cave itself for Batman. As Castle Bat is debating what to use against Wonder Woman, however, the Legion of Doom attacks with the Hall of Doom. Also, the essence of Castle Bat is moved from Gotham City proper to a snow globe of Gotham, which is then handed to Harley. Harley asks what's going on with it, and Harley explains what happened. And Harley promptly stomps on the snow globe. In the multiverse, Perpetua destroys Earth 49. Bargains with them, I should say, when the Darkest Night shows up. The assault begins, and the gathered heroes and villains watch. And Lex explains that, it's not, we don't need to think big. We need to think small. Going on about how he grew up in a town named for smallness, Smallville, Kansas. And how he used to always go to the planetarium to watch this video. The Great Beginning, all about the birth of the galaxy, the Big Bang, formation of stars, the planets, life, and stuff, all the way to Smallville. Loved it. Made him feel like a tiny part of this epic story of life. One day, the projectionist loaded the film wrong and it got played in reverse. Instead of starting at the beginning, it started down and worked backwards. Everything was unmade. Told his father about it, and so I said, nothing matters but now. So go make something of yourself. And now everything was different for Lex. That's kind of somewhat where he was on his way. But it turns out that Lex built a machine that it's explained throughout time, especially moments, brave men and women have invented machines to seek the truth, to peer into the heart of reality, however terrifying. In these past months, he's designed one such machine. The 10 metal shards are from the Forge of Worlds, and they can guide our heroes there so that they can make the machine. It's explained that, but basically, there was a point when Wonder Woman had the opportunity to use anti-crisis energy to destroy Perpetua. However, instead, Perpetua taunted her. Told Wonder Woman that if she won using anti-crisis energy, everything would be brought to bear. All history would matter, time would unknot, and many would be dead. And so instead, she uses crisis energy. And so Wonder Woman looks at Bruce and Clark and asks them to tell her the truth. Batman begins by saying that he's dead. He's been dead the whole time. He died after the first battle of Perpetua when the Batman invaded. It's how he's been using the Black Lantern ring, and he's sorry. Superman states that for him there's no changing him back and he can feel it. But both of them They're ready to fight with her one last time, as long as she'll have them. And she hugs them both. And it does seem as though she has a plan that involves Lo's regenerative abilities. And then but she gives her version of the always tomorrow speech, as she puts it. Armies are raised. And Superman raises an army of... basically gathers all the most despicable villains in the DCU and gets them to fight for him. And Gigantus says, let me guess, you want us bad guys to team up with you and save the Earth. And he says, no, actually. I want you to destroy it. And as for Diana's plan, her army is an army of Lobos. So of course, why not? In Order of the Earth, Cyborg Superman, Superman Prime, Superman, and Bizarro are waiting along with some of the Lanterns, Black Adam, Swamp Thing. I think that's Abigail Arcane. And they get ready to destroy the Earth in the midst of the battle between the Darkest Knight and Perpetua. Basically, just by destroying the Earth, they cut off source for more worlds in the Darkest Knight's Dark Multiverse. The Darkest Knight sees this, summons forth his Dark Multiverse, and go stop them. And so, in the remains, you've got heroes and villains going together, or working together to go after the denizens of these few remaining Earths. In fact, Batman has brought back quite the cadre of dead heroes, at least dead heroes, but I presume also dead villains too. And with all the with everyone, all the villains coming, Guy Gardner asked, what do they do? And Donna Troy says, we do what Diana told us to in her speech. We fight for a better tomorrow. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to Rorschach, number 2. Where we left off, a presidential candidate had nearly been assassinated. His would-be killers were killed in the process of the attempt, but one of them was dressed like, of all people, Rorschach. So we begin at Lewis Tower. The killer dressed as Rorschach, a man by the name of Myerson, lived there. And the panels kind of go back and forth between the past when he met his accomplice and the future, the present, when the investigator arrives. But he talks to. He finds a name in one of the drawers, Alma Adler. Talks with her. She's Alma Thompson now. She's been married. She was married 30 years ago. Apparently, her and Myerson went on a date once. He wasn't all that interested in her. Shortly thereafter, she met and married her husband. For years lived the same. They used to run into each other often, and the husband would constantly give Myerson grief. And then one of the employees explains that he did talk with Myerson once. In fact, he was actually in the apartment fairly recently. Door was open. He heard there had been some commotion. Door was open. Myerson was on the floor bleeding. Went in, took care of him, helped him up, and never heard anything. So okay. The investigator continues to go through and finds a comic strip. The Citizen, facing the Unthinker. The Unthinker largely wears an old SS uniform, but with 14B across the helmet. Then, of course, Citizen, a man with no face, is able to, subdues the Unthinker. Despite the Unthinker's attempts at mocking him, winning the day. And so the investigator goes to apartment 14B. There's a young black guy in there, and he explains he met Myerson once. Apparently, Myerson, was talking to himself and claiming 30 years orders. 30 years tells me what he has and I don't. But apparently, Myerson never, that was kind of it. That was the only interaction Myerson had. But that Myerson ever had with this guy. And the investigator notices the moving boxes. And the guy says, yeah, and so he asks, he explains that, yeah, but moving in. He's been in the building for a while, but he wanted a bigger place. There was a lady who used to live here. She wanted a smaller place, which is fine. Her husband died, so she didn't need the extra room. The Thompsons lived in the apartment before him. And and also apparently the one of the locks on the door, it's not scratched at all. Yes, if it's new, but the investigator leaves, and but he once again goes to talk to Alma Thompson, and the investigator has a theory that Alma's husband enjoyed a laugh at Will Myerson's expense. So about the kiss in the elevator, this one had gone on for years. Or it was the first time, or maybe not the first time, the two men fought. And Myerson gets punched and kicked in the face. And then later there was a knock on their door that night. Rorschach and a cowgirl walked in. Kicked the door in, knocking one of the locks off the door jamb. And Carl had a heart attack. The girl explains to Alma, if she tells anyone about this, anyone, the girl will come back and shoot her in the face. It is suggested the Justice Department, it turns out, however, wants to basically just say, there's no big conspiracy, no masked man back from the dead, crazy girl gets a crazy guy to do a crazy thing, that's all. But it suggests that the Justice Department hold off on the announcement. But the investigators are going on to Wyoming. So, yeah, that's where the issue ends. Which brings us to our final book of the week. Joker Harley, Criminal Sanity. Book 6. Where we left off, Dr. Quinzel had met the killer known as the Joker, who had murdered her roommate years and years ago. So the issue begins with Joker setting something up and saying that Dr. Quinn will be impressed with her gift. At the home of the parents of Harlene's old roommate, she, talks to them and says, that she's been conducting her own the investigation has gone cold, but she's just conducting her own investigation. But she's also not giving them any false hope. Because while she does potentially have something, she doesn't want to get their hopes up. So she gets a call from her brother. Apparently, their mom died. The next day at the cemetery, Harleen watches from a distance, tossing a lit cigarette into the open grave right after the service. The Joker, meanwhile, takes in a football game. While Harleen looks at her Joker board, we get a flashback to 7 years earlier in the one of Joker's first forays outside, or forays out as the Joker. And he kills Jimmy McManus, and we see the death of Jimmy McManus, and basically the deaths of the next few victims. And then we see Joker get pissed that he's being compared to Batman, who at that point hadn't been seen in weeks. It should be noted that it's on a Wayne Industries phone that Joker sees this. At GCPD headquarters in the present, Harleen is looking over the remains of the drowning tank from the previous issue, being told it's based on Houdini's water torture cell. The forensics person says it looks like the suspect got tired of recreating famous artwork. However, Harleen does state that that's not necessarily true. You could after all consider Houdini's water torture bit as being performance art. At the Gotham Science Center, two kids start playing with an electricity display. You turn a dial, pull up a lever to light up Zappy. They go all the way with it. And suddenly there's a weird smell. They feel they must have broken and shorted it out. So they go check it out, and they find a dead body. Bomb Squad shows up. Gordon explaining that electricity wires in a body in a public place is an automatic call to the bomb disposal unit. But yeah, no bomb this time. However, the killer is promptly identified as being the Chechen, a well-known contract killer for the Casamento family. Walked on charges of triple homicide for killing the lead witness. One of the detectives present calls it luck, while Harley says that when the Joker gift wraps the killer from a cold case she consulted on, luck isn't part of the equation. The Chechen is a gift, the Joker's way of showing her how easily he could get to someone that she couldn't touch. The next day, the Joker has turned himself in. He's printed, empties his pockets, goes into the interrogation room. Gordon, apparently Detective Madison Murphy didn't get much out of Joker, but they think that's Joker. And Gordon needs to know if they're right. So she suggests she goes in alone to establish rapport. So he says, okay, go ahead. Your call. He'll be right here. So, you didn't give the detectives a name. And he asks if she can call Harley. And she says no. He may not. Then the power goes out. Now, generally speaking, GCPD headquarters, when the electricity goes out, the generator is supposed to kick in after 30 seconds. It doesn't. No power means electronic door locks won't disengage. He's stuck in there. And Joker has made his way out of his cuffs. But now they have some privacy. And that is where the issue ends. And that is it for this week's roundup. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying live long and rock hard.